Hi everyone, it's Chaplain Kelly from Meditations from Inside. It's been really interesting in my prison classes in the last couple of weeks because quite a hot topic of conversation has been the incident with Will Smith and Chris Rock at the Oscars. And it's interesting because even though we spent 4 weeks in the prison Buddhist studies classes talking about anger, um, some of the responses I still got from the guys were, if someone disrespected my girlfriend, I'd probably smack them too. Or if even someone disrespected you, Chaplain Kelly, I'd probably smack them too. So I thought that I would just take a few moments here to just talk about what a Buddhist response to this incident would be. I think the first thing is that a Buddhist response to this kind of incident is obviously compassion for all of the people that are involved because it created a very difficult situation, and someone who engages in violence in that way obviously is caught up in what we would say as Buddhists in their delusions, particularly their delusion of anger. Delusions are always like a painful state of mind. So definitely our first response would be compassion. But I think beyond that, I think when we see something like that happening, it really is just a reminder to all of us um, to recognize how much anger actually harms us. In our society, it seems like there's this idea that anger's not harmful, and yet anger, as I said, is a painful state of mind, and it also causes lots of difficulties and problems for us. So we need to really just recognize that whether it's rage, which it appears that that was what was going on in Will Smith's mind, or for us maybe it's just irritation, but any type of anger really harms us. Buddha actually referred to anger as being like burning, or rather hugging a burning tree. So, I can imagine that hugging a burning tree would be a very painful experience and something that we wouldn't want to engage in. There is another quote which has been debunked. Buddha didn't say it, but I'm going to share it here because I think there's a lot of validity to this comment. It's attributed to Buddha, and again, he didn't say this, but the comment or the quote is, "Anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die." So anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. But, even though Buddha didn't say that, we get the point because, really the first person that's harmed when we get caught up in our anger, so, Will Smith, us, the first person that's harmed when we engage in anger is us. It is said that, anger creates victims, and the first victim that it creates really is the person that experiences us. It experiences it. So, how then does anger harm us? We need to think about that for a moment. So, anger harms us in many ways. It harms us physically, it harms us mentally, it harms our relationships. So, just briefly, I'm going to go through all of these, and see if you recognize any of these ways that your anger is harming you. So, the first is that anger harms us mentally because, by its very nature, it's just an extremely painful state of mind. So, when it's present in our mind, what it does is it destroys our happiness and peace. If our goal is to be peaceful and happy, it's not possible to hold that in your mind and hold anger in your mind at the same time. So you may notice that when you get angry, that you really don't make good decisions. Often we get this flash of adrenaline, and that motivates us to say something or do something. We notice that we get really reactive, and we really don't think things through before we engage in an action that's going to cause harm to ourselves and others. And it really just seems to compel us to engage in negative actions. One of the things that we notice is that when anger's in our mind, it's just really hard to enjoy ourselves at all. We may be in the best circumstances, we may be at a party, or we may be just at something that's supposed to be very positive, and yet if our mind is irritated or angry or just frustrated, we know that we're just not able to enjoy the circumstances that we find ourselves in. So those are some of the ways that anger just really harms us mentally. But anger also harms us physically. And what we notice is that when we're angry, just our whole body becomes uncomfortable, and it affects our sleep, and it just transforms us into into someone who isn't physically attractive. It just changes how our actual physical features appear to other people. So, it's pretty obvious that anger is something that is not very helpful to us physically or mentally. But one of the things we need to understand is that, anger also really destroys relationships. I mean, I can imagine that the relationship between, Will Smith and Chris Rock, is pretty broken at the moment, and it's going to take quite a bit to rebuild that trust, maybe that they had before that relationship, restore that friendship before they had, that situation. So, we really need to think, because our anger also causes difficulties for us in relationships. And we should think about, all of the relationships maybe that we've lost because of our anger. And if you're in denial about your anger, you're watching this and you're like, hey, Kelly, I'm not an angry person. Well, just think about, whether you're judgmental in your mind or whether you're critical. I mean, people don't want to be around angry people, but they also don't want to be around judgmental or critical people too. So that's something that we really need to think about. So I know that that's probably a lot to digest in like just a few minutes, but I thought it was really important to just think about, how we should respond to a situation that happens, like what happened at the Oscars. And I think the best way that we can respond is really to put it back on ourselves and say, hey, what about my anger? How is that benefiting me? How is it hurting me? How is it hurting those around me? And maybe think about making some changes in our life. So, hopefully, that's been helpful for you. Just a few thoughts, a few musings that have come out of my classes in the prison. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining me.